it's so easy to, you can so think, well, I don't know how to do that thing. And the truth is no one does until they learn how. And most of it's in the doing. And in this day and age, there's so much stuff out there. This has kind of happened in every other medium that I've jumped into. Some of the idea, first of all, is that I think sometimes different ideas feel like a different medium would be the best place for them. And I think it's really freeing to know if you have an idea and like that would be great, but if it's not trying to force an idea that would be great on as a movie into a book, if that's not really what it should be, and going like, oh, well then I'll put that over there, and if I actually think that'd be a good screenplay, that's where I'll put that time. And while it can be good sometimes, like I've got some ideas that I'm working on that are going to be a bit more like, they'll be working more in terms of, maybe you go like, oh, I could write this book and then adapt that into a film, because trying to make a film, requires a lot of money. Yeah, I think for me, long story short, sometimes you go like, this idea should be in that meeting, and that's kind of fun.
What is up, everybody? You're listening to episode 152 of SFF Addicts. I'm your host, Adrian M. Gibson, and welcome to your weekly dive into the world of science fiction, fantasy, and writing craft. Joining me this week is my co-host, my bestie from the Midwestie, the queen of my days, Greta Kelly. How you doing? What was that? This
Hey.
a little razzle-dazzle.
Gotta do something different, do some jazz hands.
We're going deep right at the beginning. Jazz hands. We got this shit. And if you want to support Greta and her jazz hands, you can buy The Queen of Days or The Frozen Crown for the Seventh Queen. You got 3 books to choose from, all fantastic if you want to help Greta and support her work.
And of course, you guys can all go and support Adrian and his new anniversary edition copy of Mushroom Blues with the brand new foreword by Nick Eames and a bunch of beautiful interior artwork. You're going to want to see it. I got all my copies early and I'm very happy and they're beautiful. So go check them out.
I don't even have my copies yet, but that's like Greta is my guinea pig, so it's okay. And if you want to support MJ and her quest to quit her day job and feed her cat, you can go check out the Tales of Tomorrow duology, which starts with Among Thieves, and Thick Ass Thieves is book 2. If you want a good old heist novel with lots of hatchets and murder and mayhem and swearing, it's a wonderful time, and MJ's a wonderful human being. As well, a quick note for listeners, you can support SFF Addicts on Patreon for a ton of cool extras like bonus episodes, author readings, and more. So check the links in the description to help us do what we do here. Also, don't forget to rate and review the podcast on your favorite podcast app, and subscribe to the FanFiAddict YouTube channel where this and every other episode of the show is available in full video. And now joining us once again is Luke Arnold, actor and author of the Fetch Phillips archives, including his latest novel, Whisper in the Wind. Welcome back to the show, Luke. How are you?
Thank you once again. I'm pretty good. Yeah. Yeah. Hanging out on a Sunday in Australia, the sun's shining. This is a lovely way to spend the day.
Luke's plant room is lush. Mm-hmm. Life's good, man. Life's good.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. If anything starts happening here, then you really got to worry about it. This is like my Beauty and the Beast rose, I guess. As long as these are happy and healthy, I'm probably doing all right. Yeah.
As well, this is a heads up. This is part 2 of our 2-part chat with Luke, so I recommend checking out part 1 to get to know him better. Today, though, we're running the gamut of storytelling as we delve into Masterclass on writing for different mediums. Before we dig deeper into the episode, a quick word from our sponsor. Welcome to Transference, where death and sickness are but a distant memory. Nicholas Five Boroughs is a sicko, someone that takes on others' illnesses. In a city where diseases can be transferred, the rich buy longer lives without pain, and the poor get a short life of constant sickness. Brought back from the brink of death by his friend Brian Meadowhearth, or maybe the invisible hand of an outside actor, Nick finally gets the chance to try and change things, to finally stop the whole disease transfer network, Tensions escalate as Nick infiltrates a higher society he doesn't understand and starts to fall for Dorothy Sungate, the very person he needs to manipulate to be successful. And between run-ins with a talking cat, genetically modified humans, and a robotic police force, the world around him just keeps getting stranger. Can Nicholas tear down the disease transfer architecture? And how much of his humanity is he willing to bargain along the way? A dystopian vision of healthcare and a market economy. Transference will appeal to fans of Red Rising, Blade Runner, and the BioShock franchise. Soon to be a complete duology with the release of Transcendence in the summer of 2025. Transference by Ian Patterson is available now in paperback and ebook. Get your copy today. And now, enjoy the rest of this episode of SFF Addicts. So just to start off, I wanted, last episode, if you've listened to this, you gave a little bit of some references to the things that you've been working on, but if you can give an overview of your involvement in 4 different mediums. So we got writing fiction, we got acting screenplays, comics, and video games.
Yeah, all right. So to go through, as if you heard the last one, but we'll say it again. So far have had 4 books published in the Fetch Phillips archives. So that's my, that's kind of my prose work. As we said before, wrote a novel before and a bunch of short stories, but really as far as stuff that's kind of out and accessible, got them. As when it comes to screenplays, I've had a couple of jobs for some indie production companies writing screenplays for them. I've written a bunch of my own spec scripts. Some that have been kind of kicked around or I've worked on with people. There's something at the moment, I guess at the moment I'll say about to take a TV show out and go through that process really for the first time of actually trying to go get something made that I've written. And then of course, as an actor for however bloody long it's been, a couple of decades or something, have been, it's interesting because you're not a writer, but you are involved in the writing process very often. Sometimes more than probably the me, sometimes more than some of the people I'd want to work with would want me to be. But it is, a screenplay is a blueprint, I think. And so there's often a lot of stuff that happens on the day. So for better or worse, every actor is going to be somewhat in conversation with the writing of a screenplay. Then I have co-written a comic book called Essentials that is just come out from the Lab Press. So I wrote this with Chris Doc Wyatt, who's a kind of producer, writer, showrunner, currently, kind of the head writer, co-head writer on Lego Ninjago Dragon Rising. So we co-wrote that together. Nothing announced yet, but we're unofficially working on more in that series and some other comic book stuff that hopefully I'll be able to announce at some point. So still very much in that world. And very funny to throw this in a masterclass, but fun to talk about, which is that I've recently, my brother and I have started making our first video game that's going to be released on, you can wishlist it now on Steam. It's called Shoot for the Moon. While it is a very, kind of arcadey, simple little game as far as its core game loop, there are a bunch of characters, fully voiced characters, and I'm really trying to, with that, it's my first go at kind of taking the experience of writing other things into something that's a bit more interactive, dynamic, and crafting a story in that where, on a kind of medium where the story isn't the main point. It's kind of not exactly the focus, but it gives context for everything happening there. And so it's a really fun new experience that I'm just embarking on myself at the
Nice.
It's very cool. So many fingers in different pies. On a personal level, why does it appeal to you to express your creativity through all these different formats? And how do you overcome the intimidation of going into a new medium and maybe not knowing how to do everything? What that
pie tastes like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before you stick your finger in.
Are you apple or are you cherry?
Yeah. Well, I feel like that would be, if this is a masterclass, I feel like that would be the subtitle to it, would be about I don't know exactly what it is, but it's jumping into, mediums of which you have no experience, and kind of in some ways trying to demystify that idea. Because I think it's so easy, it's a bit of how we tagged off the last episode to, you can so think, well, I don't know how to do that thing. And the truth is no one does until they learn how. And most of it's in the doing. And in this day and age, there's so much stuff out there. So I think even though I've only just started writing a game, I've always been a gamer. Yeah, so this is probably a good way to talk about now. And this has kind of happened in every other medium that I've jumped into. Some of the idea, first of all, is that I think sometimes different ideas feel like a different medium would be the best place for them. And I think it's really freeing to know if you have an idea and like that would be great, but if it's not trying to force an idea that would be great on as a movie into a book, if that's not really what it should be, and going like, oh, well then I'll put that over there, and if I actually think that'd be a good screenplay, that's where I'll put that time. And while it can be good sometimes, like I've got some ideas that I'm working on that are going to be a bit more like, they'll be working more in terms of, maybe you go like, oh, I could write this book and then adapt that into a film, because trying to make a film, requires a lot of money. Yeah, I think for me, long story short, sometimes you go like, this idea should be in that medium, and that's kind of fun. But then through, I'd say, my whole time playing games, I feel like for a while I try and play games like a developer. So even if I didn't have a lot of time, I knew I had interest in games and interest in being a creative, interest in writing. So even when I did not have the time, I would still try and like, if it sounded like some game had come out that was doing something new with narrative, I'd get it, I'd play it enough till the point where I could see like, okay, this is what they're doing, this is what's different, this is why people are reacting in this way. I guess I'll leave it there. I could sink 50 more hours into this, but I don't have time, and I won't do that. But I always wanted to keep abreast of what was going on. Same with that. Up until this moment, I've spent a lot of time, there's so much great stuff online now where game developers and game writers will talk about the stuff they worked on, how they approach it. And so it's all there. So there's a really good mixture. I think there's a great thing that happens when you come in with the right mix of naivety and understanding. It's not coming into something not understanding it at all. I don't think that generally works that well. But also, the same trappings happen where if you study something particular, in a particular way, and be told this is how you do this thing, and you're going in going like, all right, like before you even had a go at it, someone's already told you the way to do it. That can also close you off from maybe approaching things in different ways. So it's something about embracing not knowing, enjoying not knowing, as long as you're ready to rewrite and do that stuff again, that's a part of it. And and for me as well, it's actually more stressful. Like nothing's kind of more stressful for me these days than like if I get booked on an acting job and they're like really excited because they've seen me in something else. They for some reason think I'm going to be great and don't have to audition, and I come in and I'm just there based on the fact that like, oh, I'm here because I'm meant to be good at this. I'm a professional in this field. I've done it for a while. That could be a lot more intimidating than when I'm like the excitement of going, hey, I've got a game coming out and no one's expecting anything. It's like, cool, this is kind of something new. I get to enter it without the same kind of pressure as the field that I've had spent more time.
Yeah, it's like the debuting as an author beforehand. You're just like, yeah, well, like obviously there's pressure and there's notions of what it means to put something out there, but like, yeah, even if you're like 20 books down the line, someone's like, oh fuck, he's getting kind of shaky as an author. Like he's not doing so good anymore. Like,
someone's gotten too big for their editor, I see.
Right. Yes. So many times. But
yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, you go. Yeah. I was going to say, I think it is that. That it is embracing that thing. I think that little delay is not helping us here. I'm going to finish this point, then you go to yours. That I think it is embracing that. That both it can be tougher down the line because you do sometimes feel like, oh, maybe I can't take this risk and do something different because I know the criticism is going to be harder than if it was something new. And also, like I've seen it before sometimes, like. What's the most annoying thing sometimes is if you've got someone who is new to a field, like an actor and it's their first gig, and they don't want to kind of happily be the new one. They don't want to happily go like, they don't want to embrace the fact that they're like, hey, this is kind of new for me. So it was that, it was like, oh, I'll take a bit of advice. I'll watch other people. I don't have to come in. I don't have to bring my ego into this and feel like, no, I have to be like cool and know what I'm doing from day one. And I think once you do into something new, being very happily the new kid on the block, and take advice, take criticism, see how things are working, be willing to test it and get feedback. If you come into it with that, then you can try and do everything, and it's all exciting and fun.
Yeah, and
Over to you.
thank you, sir. Thank you. And we talked to John Scalzi recently. He had a really good piece of advice, which is like give yourself permission to suck. And I think in the case of like starting a new medium, having the self-confidence, it's a weird kind of like paradox here of like having the self-confidence to suck. And I think it's really cool to hear like the way that you connect with different mediums, and the through line is your love of storytelling, and the way that you're keeping up to date on what new games are doing to understand how they function narratively, how the game mechanics have adapted, and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to exploring different mediums, how do you think that's helped shape your perception of storytelling in general?
Yeah, I do. Well, I think it's important to do in some ways, and not necessarily. You can be a fantastic author and never play a video game, not watch any modern television, and just do your thing and do it great. And no, I wouldn't say like, well, you don't really know if you haven't played The Last of Us or whatever. Like, you don't know story. It's like, no, it isn't a prerequisite, but most people, I imagine, watching this are going to be making stuff that they are going to be handing to gamers, to people who watch, streaming stuff, who watch every kind of, a million different kinds of stuff on YouTube and online. So you're kind of in conversation with that, whether you know it or not. And I think especially if you're doing genre writing, if you're in fantasy and sci-fi, and look, to be honest, I hadn't read a lot of fantasy before I started writing it. I'd read a bit, but a lot of my touchstones were in gaming and in other, things. And I'd probably, and sometimes similarly, that thing, I don't know, a lot of people probably in the same boat where sometimes you've watched a video essay on something you have, like I haven't watched all of that anime, but I did watch this kind of breakdown video essay on it. So I'm kind of across that.
It's like, do you want to spend like 200 hours watching the anime, or you can watch a 4-hour breakdown?
Yeah.
Just and I watch think the speed run.
Yeah, I think it can be helpful, and you don't want to get into the point where it's like, I need to know everything. I'm writing a zombie thing, so I better have watched everything, because it doesn't actually matter to that extent. But it is knowing that you're in conversation with this stuff, and there could be things there to be learned, and that some of the best writers today, you don't have to be looking at like the big mainstream awards to see who the best writers are today. You might find that like actually they are writing for video games, they are in comics, they are in some other medium, and they're doing something there that you would find inspiring, you'd find that it kind of bounces off what you're doing a little bit. There are absolutely things to looking at all those mediums. Not only does it help what you write, but I think it can help you understand what your audience and what your readers, like what the world they're seeing, what they've experienced up to that point.
Yeah. I think it's a good way of
I think that's interesting. Well, like you have so much experience in all these different mediums, and I think it would be valuable to kind of dig into that just a little bit. So in your mind, what makes writing novels or acting and writing for screen, video game, like voice acting, and writing comic books unique? Like, what are the things that make them all kind of stand out on their own?
Well, I guess probably a good place to start is thinking that in some ways comics and screenplays are very similar, because they are blueprints for someone else's creative work. They are not the finished product. You still want to tell a really good story. You want to make sure that everyone, from editor, publisher, artist, crew, whoever they are, who reads this gets what you're talking about, is, that's coming through clearly, that all the elements are there. but it is not supposed to be the final product. Still take pride in it, still put everything into it. But, you're either giving a screenplay to a whole production crew and 1 million people to then go, okay, what am I getting from this? What's the costume department going to go and get based on what you've written here? And what's the director going to do with the sequence? What's an actor going to do based on the dialogue and the descriptions of this character? And then with a comic, it's really interesting. It's often that document for one person. Essentials has 7 different artists. So we had, which gave us its own challenges of trying to make sure all these 7 artists who are not talking to each other are all delivering pages that do work together. But often, you'll see in some long-running comics, if you get to look at the scripts for them, when, sometimes they're available, they are a letter to someone saying, hey, so maybe this on this page and this and that character, and then this happens here, and maybe you do your kind of thing with that. It is this kind of written collaborative process. So they work in that way. And then I think, prose is then the opposite. Prose, you are doing everything. There is nowhere to hide. There is no one coming in to save you. I think, having worked mostly in television and film and TV before, I was a little surprised by that in the process with my editor. Especially because it was my first one, and you're like, okay, this is where I've got it to. And they're like, yeah, cool, we'll buy it, but maybe these, maybe here are our thoughts. And I'm like, oh, cool, okay, I'll throw them all in, make those changes, then give it a read, and and then we'll see where we're at, because it's everything in film and TV is in development hell, and it's all, you can spend so long waiting to get out of the notes session. But for me, so I got to that point, and then my publisher was like, all right, great, cool, we'll send us the copy editor. It was like, oh, what do you mean? I thought we'd knock this around, and I want to see what you think about this. It's like, no, it's your book. Fucking, it's done. Let's go. It's like, and so for better or worse, and I know some editors, there are definitely some, the tough thing is in publishing, there isn't a lot of time. So some of that comes down to the fact that anyone working in publishing has to stretch themselves over many books. I've talked to some people who work in different genres that seem to get some more time, and maybe that can be an author by author thing. But really, you've just got to know, this is you. It's all these other people are going to come in, but it's a conversation between you and the reader. You are building that story in their head. There is no filter. So you got to take control of everything. And then with video games, and as I'm learning all this, it is a different kind of conversation with the player. And it's really hard to bring games down to one particular way of being. Some are a kind of choose your own adventure thing. Some are more cinematic. Some are, I really like, oh no, this movie is going to play out over the top of the game, but it's kind of like just a very long film. Some is completely, there are clear choices where say a choose your own adventure book, and others are more, and I think that's more where we're dancing with Shoot for the Moon, where there is this supporting story that is adding context to the game, but we really want to avoid too much ever slowing it down or getting in the way. So it is this kind of contextual dynamic story that is both reacting to what the player's doing and sitting behind it, but you never want it to start becoming the focus. We hopefully there are little moments where it sneaks up on you, and then we do get to go well, here's a story beat, and hopefully all the context we've built will hit it emotionally and plot wise and that stuff. But it's always got to be in response to the game, and so it's weird to go. It's a different process, because I think in all those other ones the writing comes first. That's where you begin. And sometimes in film, the opposite thing happens, where you go hey, we got an idea, we got these stars, please write us this story. And usually that stuff sucks. That really turns out well. It's the writing comes first. But I think the interactivity is so important in video games that you really want the writing to serve the gameplay and to be completely in conversation with that. And I think you've probably got to be ready at all times, no matter how good your idea is story-wise. If it is not serving the moment-by-moment gameplay, you're going to cut it and get rid of it. Because if people are playing a game, they're generally playing it because they want to be interacting. They want to be playing the game. And except for a few very rare examples, if the story isn't serving that gameplay, you're going to want to throw it out.
Yeah, I think there are I recently played this game called As Dusk Falls,
Oh,
uh,
okay. I haven't played that.
which is basically just like interactive sort of movie. It felt
Yeah,
like,
you're right.
or like in this case, since it was kind of like episodic, like interactive TV show.
Oh, yes.
Um,
Okay. I think I know the kind
and
of game it is there. Yeah,
and
yeah.
and so it's like there are contextual gameplay elements like button presses and
Yes.
you get like dialogue choices and things like that, but it
Okay.
is a kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
game where I think this is one of the few experiences I've had where it felt like the story was taking, like you said, like instead of the gameplay taking the lead role, the story was taking the lead role, and the art direction and everything like that as well in context of the story.
Yes, and those kind of games, which I guess it's not the Until Dawn, but there's that series of games by that.
I think the developers like Quantum Dream
Yes,
is the one that kind of makes these more cinematic,
that's
interactive
right. Yeah.
stories.
So there are those developers, and that's what they do, and you rock up for that, and you know that it's a somewhat interactive movie, and then it's then going even more on that line with a certain kind of interactivity as those games like Immortality and Her Story, which are they're kind of harkening back to those FMV games where it really is there's less interactivity in some way. Like you've just got these pieces of footage and are trying to either solve a mystery or, glean stuff, from the footage you've got. So yeah, there are those ways when you can go like, this is a story and you are removed from it. You are not actually affecting, like because in that one, there are some moments where you affect what the characters do, but there are some where you don't even have a say over that. You're kind of this watcher of this story with some little way of some interactive element. So yeah, there's a whole gamut, and then yeah, there are other ones that go. But yeah, it goes from that end to things that are completely there is barely any story. What's there is only to set up the mechanics, and for a long time that was what we thought video game storytelling was, and now it's very hard to kind of define what it is on any, other than a very individual game by game basis.
Yeah, and I think in a lot of these cases, like context is king, and
Yeah,
like context of what the medium entails and understanding like if you want to get into screenplays, like understanding what is involved in writing screenplay, what is involved in acting and the whole process of making a movie or TV show. Same with video games, same with writing novels, like, but most of our audience is more familiar with writing novels
mm,
since that's our main focus. But when it comes to different mediums, when it comes to tackling a different medium for the first time, what kind of research could writers do beforehand before they jump into unfamiliar territory?
look, I think it's a really interesting thing. I think you want to cast a really wide net, but you want to focus on people who are doing that job specifically, rather than just like there. I think there are lots of people out there, and we know them in every field. There are some people who seem to do a lot more talking about the craft and the job than actually doing the job. Some of them are great, but they can really lead you down the wrong path. Definitely as an actor, there are so many people who, they're focused. Like so many acting teachers out there who, create their little cult and and do their thing that feels, and you can get really enticing because when you're in it, if you're doing those classes, I don't know if everyone's seen Barry, but it was a fantastic example of this thing where the class becomes the focus and rather than the actual preparing you to do the work, and it can actually do the opposite of preparing you for the work because the goal is different in a class, and classes are great and doing exercises are great, but I guess if we work through each of them, I think then going to screenplays, look, the Scriptnotes podcast is a fantastic place to start. There are a bunch of them out there, and because a lot of stuff when you talk about movies, there is so much critique out there, and so many people who are talking about movies and like they're talking about how they're made, but they're actually just critiquing them from an audience point of view, and that can be somewhat useful. But the beauty of Scriptnotes is you're talking, it's really like John and Craig are two working screenwriters, and that kind of great thing where they've done all different kinds of films. A lot of that thing that as a screenwriter, just you could be a screenwriter for many years and get paid very well to do it, and it doesn't mean any of your stuff has come out or stuff that's come out with your name on it. The job of screenwriting is very different to the idea of screenwriting, and because except for very few examples, a script actually isn't as valuable as a writer. And I think that's where a lot of people think, like, if I write this script and I send it off, James Cameron makes my movie and I get a big check. It's very rare. It's like really more like it's more what happens if people are going to make a movie and they've kind of got an idea or they got some people attached, and then they will hire a screenwriter that they know because that writer has worked with them. And that writer will be there through development, through production. They're going to be on set on the day to be able to like change things as required. Like it is an active job. And the spec script thing was always, I think, that idea of like the golden script that's just out there and gets sold and makes you a lot of money. Even when that was a thing, it wasn't as much of a thing as I think the people thought it was. But especially these days, like it is a job it's a job and it's an active job that you do. And your worth as a writer is more valuable than any one script you write. And so I think that's why Scriptnotes is great, because it talks about it in those terms. It's talking about the job of writing, not the dream of having written a screenplay and then getting kudos and money, but not having to do anything ever again. And so I think in terms of that, where are my, hang on. So everyone's probably heard of Save the Cat, which is a good book to go to in those terms. And if you do, but I think my deal is, if this is my masterclass, you're only allowed to read Save the Cat if you also then go to Kurt Vonnegut's Shape of a Story video on YouTube and watch that as well, because that is also the exact opposite of Save the Cat. It's great to know how you should structure a book. It's great to know how other people are structuring a book, but you also need to know that not every story has to adhere to that. So if you do Save the Cat, also make sure you see Kurt Vonnegut's take on Shaping a Story, just to keep that all balanced. But there's some kind of good places to start. I do think start reading screenplays. That's the beauty for me as well. Like being an actor, you're going to read all the worst screenplays ever, as well as some good ones. So make sure you go hunt out some good ones and
but
some
also
bad
some
ones
bad
as well.
ones. Yeah.
Yeah. See what people are doing. Because that makes you feel, it's always good seeing like some things not working, because it does make you go like, it can give you that little boost you need to be like, oh, I can do this. And then you want to read some great ones and go like, oh my God, I wouldn't even know how to begin to do this. What a genius. And know that you fit somewhere in the middle, and that if you don't work hard, you could do the bad one. And if you work hard, you could do the great one. So I think for screenplays, that's a great place to start. And then with comics, it's harder, because the thing is, with comics, there is no rule book really. It is a letter sometimes to one person. So the best place, I guess the place I went, there's some stuff online, but if you get some certain, it's often, the more expensive editions of certain books. Here's one here of Promethea, that sometimes they have the script at the back. So here you have an example of Alan Moore's script for this. The deal with this is, like, you don't just look at Alan Moore, because he's kind of the only person who writes like he writes. It could be good, but don't think you have to do this panel by panel, massive all caps description telling every little detail. If that's the kind of writer you are and you think that's like what's going to sing for you, great. But similarly, get a whole bunch of different examples. Don't just see one thing, but read a lot of comics, read a lot of graphic novels. Very few of them are the same. I think like comics aren't, if you just want to write comics, it's also even in some ways harder to break into. Just going like, hey, I want to go do the monthly, issues of X-Men and try and get in there. Like that's a very specific kind of writing. Where like go and see what people are doing in graphic novels. Because a lot of them aren't if you've only come from one side, what I think some of the classics that I think that, really set the mold of graphic novels, Persepolis and Mouse, I think lots of people know, but they're amazing. Day Trip is another one I really love, which is kind of it's a fantastic, more meditative, more kind of, I don't know, feels like literature in some ways, that's really kind of fun. So not a bad place to go for a prose writer to check some other kind of
I have a
graphic novel out.
recommendation for nonfiction for comics.
Cool. What's that?
There's Scott McCloud. He's an American cartoonist, but he has a comic series. One of them, the first one is Understanding Comics, which gives you context for the actual act of storytelling through the comic medium, and then making comics and reinventing comics are kind of like his follow-ups about the actual process of making comics. So I think that's also a good like
Brilliant.
nonfiction, and it's cool because it's nonfiction told through the format of comics, which is really
It's
that's
awesome.
great.
cool.
I've got
Yeah.
the first one somewhere, but it is another. It's so funny that one slipped my mind, but it is such a great place to start. And it was one of those ones. I think I was, deep in the process of, doing essentials before I then picked that up. It was like, this would have been a great thing to read before I'd started. So no, that is a really fantastic place to start. To just understand, and there are kind of, as I said, there's no real method, but the two very common ways to go about it are whether you can describe panel by panel what happens on every page. That's what we did with Essentials, because we had to get this 7 artists working on this one story. We kind of had to be fairly specific in how we were going to have that play out. The other way is what was kind of coined as the Marvel method, which gives the artist more freedom, where you kind of say, on this page, this happens. Here's what happens. Here's the dialogue. And you leave it up to the artist to then, decide how they break that story up on that page. So they're kind of at least two different ways to look at it. But yeah, the Understanding Comics and those Scott McCloud's books are fantastic. And then it's interesting with gaming. I think so much of my stuff has just been YouTube, really. Like, my brother, who's doing more of the coding, has ordered a bunch of textbooks and things recently. He's similarly self-taught and everything. But there's just so much stuff on YouTube. Game dev is such a big part of it. And you can find so many great interviews with game creators, game writers, everyone there. But really playing games is the great, the place to start. Yesterday, I was playing both Citizen Sleeper 2, which is like the ultimate kind of sci-fi choose your own adventure, with some dice rolling in there, but a lot of it just coming down, you're going to do a lot of reading, but it's just a beautifully told story that you feel very involved in, very tense, thematically rich. And then the Root Trees Are Dead afterwards, which is a great, was originally a browser game. But then they remastered and came out on Steam. You're just putting a family tree together by scouring through a 1996 version of the internet and a bunch of periodicals and things, trying to
Cool, man.
piece together. It's fantastic, and a very lot of context-based storytelling. It's really cool. So two very different ways of getting both two types of game that didn't require graphically really not that demanding. I don't know what I don't know if Root Trees Are Dead. I don't think it's a very big team, whether it's a single dev or not. But Citizen Sleeper 2 is just one guy who made the first game, and I think the second one's the same. So great ways to see to look at what people are doing very successfully with storytelling-based video games.
Fantastic.
Also, like really fun homework to have to do.
Yeah.
just play the game. It's great.
Yeah, but like in the case of novels too, it's like the more you read, the more you understand about
True.
it. So it's like, fucking enjoy it. Like if you don't enjoy it in the process of like consuming it, then it's like, I don't know if it's the right
Not the
move
place
for you
for
to
you.
create it. Yeah.
Completely. And it is, and we all know the thing was so bad recently. It's like, oh damn, I'm not reading as much as I should. So at least these other things add to it as well. But I do think that is the thing of like, whatever, that's the thing too, of whatever these things are, if you're not a great consumer of those things, if that's not what you're excited by, then maybe steer clear of it. Having, as someone who has done a bunch of things, something I always think about is like, your only reward for doing something well is the opportunity to do more of that thing. That's really all that's waiting for you. It's like you think there's anything that you think of validation or the big paychecks, they are either non-existent or fleeting. But what you do get is people going like, hey, more of that, please. So very rarely is there any reason to do something you don't want to keep doing because you think something's going to come at the end of it. It's like if you write a good screenplay, like if you think like, if I wrote this screenplay, it's such a good idea. If I did that, then what? Like all you get is the chance to go like, hey, cool. Do you want to now sit on set, and be with the actors when you have to rewrite, be there when this guy wants to rewrite your lines and you want to workshop with it, and then come and write this other thing. If that doesn't sound interesting, just that dream screenplay in your head that you think will make you rich and famous if only you sat down to do it, don't worry about it. Because unless you want to be a screenwriter, fuck your screenplay. No one cares. And it's like that in everything. And I think sometimes we can get caught up going, but if I did this, then it's like, if you're not sitting down to do it, maybe that's not the thing you really want to do.
Yeah, it's like Sisyphian creativity. Don't punish yourself.
Yeah, that's right. So you'd better enjoy it now, because when you only have to do a lot more of it.
Exactly. Well, let's dig into some of the fundamentals. I think there's a lot of creative cross-pollination between these different mediums, sort of like different writing skills that apply across the various mediums. So let's start off, I guess, with story structure and how you approach structuring a story in the different mediums. If you find there's much of a difference between, say, plotting a screenplay or a novel versus a video game or a comic and what have you.
So yes, long answer that we'll get into is there are some different things to think about across them. I also think it's worth keeping in mind. I just brought so many props. It's great. I don't know if you both read the George Saunders, A Swim in a Pond in the Rain.
I have not read that.
No, not yet.
This is so it's essentially kind of his class on Russian short stories. So you go through and you read a short story, and to begin with, you kind of read a page, and then he kind of comes and comments in and talks about the audiobook for this is great too, because you're listening to it. And he has great people reading the short stories, but he's kind of breaking down what makes each story work and forces you to slow down. And kind of the main point of it is the question of going because he gave someone one of his stories to read, and I was like, yeah, I like it. All right, what do you like about it? And they said, well, when I read a line and I like it, I like it enough to read the next. And thinking that's all you have to think about. Would a reasonable person reading line 4 get enough of a jolt to go on to line 5? And I think that general concept applies to everything. And so even when thinking about structure, it's so easy to it's good to think about overall how this stuff ties together and what the overall thing you're doing is, and your log line or your general pitch and all that. But none of that matters if actually moment by moment you are giving your reader, your player, your audience enough to keep going. And especially in this day and age where our attention is fucked, that actual craft is what matters. And so I think, in some ways, look after that. Doesn't matter what medium you're working in, that will carry you through. I do think then overall there is a little bit of, if a screenplay, once again, you go back to the Save the Cat thing and our idea of the hero's journey. There is something about, everyone's seen enough movies to expect certain things from a film, that what we're going to get through that time. And if you break that, you do want to be doing it very consciously, because even if it is well told and interesting, we have certain expectations. So being aware of that, and being aware of we all know that feeling of if you start getting 45 minutes into a movie and you don't yet know what it's about, you don't know what we're trying to do, that you start giving up on it. Because we very early want to go with a film. We want to go all right, who am I following? What are they trying to do? What's in their way? What is the problem? Something in them that we start going oh, hopefully that changes by the end of this, either an internal or external thing, hopefully both. Understanding that stuff very clearly, very quickly in a film, I think is really important. I think the same applies for TV, but in some ways, TV and prose and probably comics go more hand in hand, where it is kind of the character and place seem to matter more, where it's not, and sometimes, and this is something that I am fighting against myself as someone who likes to go here's the overall thing, I'm in control of it all, I've got it all worked out, that writing a TV show, you go like, for people who are in TV and if you're going to pitch that show, they don't want to know the end. They're like, what are you talking about? It's like, we want to know, like, who are we with? What are their challenges? What's kind of going to happen to them? Who are they going to interact with? And then let's see, and that process that we talked about, I talked about a bit, I think in the last one about, seeing where Fetch goes and the discomfort that happens if I try to force him in a direction. Well, that's certainly going to happen where, like, if you craft your story before you've cast the actors and brought the directors on and maybe a writer's room and a studio or network that has their own ideas about where this wants to go, that if you're entering into that world, you need to know that you're preparing for that kind of writing, that you are creating a place, creating some characters, and you're going to see what happens. And you have an idea of where you want them to go, but the most delightful stuff's going to happen when you, in episode 3, you realize, like, this relationship's the heart of the show. I didn't think it was. I wouldn't have known till we got these 2 actors on set and we found out that this is really what's going on for these characters, and we made that moment. Now that's the show. And there are countless examples of that. So I think structurally you are not the same way. Like, you would better know, like, if you start writing your screenplay and you don't really know what's going to happen till the end, you can go back and rewrite it and put it all together. And same with a book. You can pants it and work, that first draft can be finding out because you can rewrite it a million times. With your TV show, you're not going to, you don't get to the end of the series and go like, we worked it out. Let's go back and reshoot episode 1 so we set this stuff up. It'd be, I'm sure lots of shows wishes they could. And even, as an actor, I know sometimes with you too, you're like, this is what happens? Well, I wish I'd known that when I was, walking in at the very beginning. So, yeah. And I think similarly, in comics, I'm experiencing a similar thing where you're like, once you write your script, you give it to the artist and they deliver this stuff back. And your job isn't to then give them endless notes to shape them into the thing you imagine. It's to go like, that's the story now. All right, well, I will now respond to that. Either when you do, this is my favorite part of writing comics, is when all the art is done, before it goes to the letterer, you get to rewrite the whole thing. Everything that is dialogue or, little bits of narration, you can now write based on what the artist gave you. And mostly it's just cutting stuff. And in film and TV, it's the same thing. You realize once there's something visual, you realize that half your words aren't necessary anymore. But sometimes you go like, oh, there's a whole thing here we haven't explored. And now they can actually have a conversation about that I wouldn't have thought of before the stuff came through. So yeah, I'd say structure is more important. Understanding the structure is probably more important overall for, books and screenplays, where you've got to open your mind up to the collaborative process and the other things.
Keep it flexible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But pacing also must be a big aspect that changes depending on the medium. So how do you determine the ideal pace? For a novel example, you've got all the time in the world, not so much truth when you're coming to a graphic novel or a movie. So how do you determine what the ideal pace is?
Or a video game when the player can also affect the pace.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think video games, very clear. It's so easy. So much of video games relies on kind of hacking your brain and keeping you in a loop and giving you little dopamine hits. And nothing's going to kill that more than stopping for a cutscene or clicking through a whole bunch of dialogue. So really, really crucial there that you don't want to destroy a great game by making the players stop playing it to listen to your stuff because you think it'll pay off at the end. So really understanding like how you can fold that in, stuff happening while it's being played, or make sure you are keeping that really clear. Super crucial with that. And I think that's what's so interesting these days is like, yeah, there are so many different ways to approach it. Similar to what we talked about with the books. I can't remember if it's this episode or the last one, but hopefully everyone's listened to both. But that idea of making sure these, theme, character, and plot all on top of each other. That similarly, making sure. I think that helps across all these. Is going like if everything's serving more than one purpose, then you're probably going to be good. And it's going to be easier to control your pacing. Every time you feel like, well, we have to stop and do this one thing, but we're leaving some other part behind. Like I've acted in a bunch of procedural kind of thing, or just mystery shows, some procedurals, and it's so it's you can get these moments sometimes where you go like in these character moments and you're going like, well, this is really important, or thematically like this is the moment that really makes everything clear, but you need to know that a bunch of your audience are watching, like they want to get all that other stuff, but that's not why they're watching. Not in the front of their head. That's not why they're watching. That's what it'll be left with. That's why they might cry at the end, but they are watching to find out who killed that person. And so if a scene happens, and if too many scenes in a row happen that aren't linked to that, they're going to be like, what is this? I don't get. They're not going to actually take in the great thematic character work you're doing, because what they think they're doing is trying to find out who killed this person. And even though as the person crafting it, that doesn't matter as much as the rest of it. That's what they're there for. And so I think that, yeah, definitely in TV, that's right. And even in TV, it's like, hey, this is just so these characters can hang out. It's all like TV is so much relationships. That's what we're here for. Know what your season arc is, know what your episode arc is, so that you can go, like, give them a hook. And even if it's nothing, like I was watching rewatching some of Atlanta the other day. And Atlanta is not a plot-based show by any means. No. That is not what anyone is watching for. But there is always a thing. There is often, you see, like at the beginning of the episode, he's kicked out of where he's staying. And so amongst all this nonsense and surrealism, there is a little, like, they just know enough to feed a little thing going like, but is he going to find a place to stay by the end of the episode? And often he doesn't. And it's everyone's in a similar spot at the end to where they started. But just knowing, even in a show as kind of arty and surreal as that, they know to go like, let's give an arbitrary goal, so the audience at least go like, oh, that's what the episode's about. Or, the one, that fantastic, the one where he's just trying to get his hair cut. And it just is a setup for nonsense and absurdity and all this other crazy stuff to happen. But it's like, it's at least that kind of structure. And I think knowing that there are very few in any medium, if you just come in going, here's my deep examination of this thing, all the stuff you actually want to give them, if that's on the spoon that you're pointing at your reader or audience, they're most likely going to recoil. But tell them like, oh, they're trying to get here to do this thing. Then it's like, oh, cool, I'll watch that. And then you hit them with the other stuff. Yeah, I forget what the question was about, but
no, it's perfect. It's perfect. It's like pacing is like very, like, so much of it is rooted in expectation, and it's like giving a kid medicine. It's like, hey, I'm gonna give you this medicine.
Mary Poppins.
Yeah. And it's like here's this medicine, and it tastes like ass, and you're gonna hate it, and you're gonna tell me every time I give you medicine, fuck no, I don't want this, because this like 3-year-old says fuck no. But if we make that medicine taste like cherry or strawberry or something like that, then it's more enticing. So it's kind of like giving the reader or the viewer or the player that expectation, but making it palatable through the sort of foundation in an idea and a purpose of like why this thing is happening, why someone's doing what they're doing. And I think so much of what you're talking about comes back to character. And it's like, in video games, the player is inhabiting a character. And so they're going to imprint something upon that character that they're playing. And in books, it's the same thing. Like, you latch onto characters and TV shows and movies and comics. So much of it is rooted in characters. So how do you approach perspective and character development in these different formats?
Yeah, I think once again, it looks similarly to everything we've said. It's making sure these things all overlap. Like, the character we're following should be the most interesting character in this setting, and this setting should be the most interesting place to put this character. And then the thing that happens at the beginning of the story should be the most interesting thing that could happen to this character in this setting. And if that's not what you're doing, then you should really think about, like, is this the story I should be, should we be starting 5 years later? Why this day? And I even, like, as fond as I am of like my first book, I think that's probably something I could have asked. Like, I was so just like, here we go. He's going to take a case. Here's what I was kind of excited by, somewhat the mundanity of being in this world and what was going on. But I wonder if going back, if I do things a little differently with the first book, if I was thinking of it in these terms.
Or like, if your editor didn't say, it's all good, like this published just now.
Yeah. And the feeling was like, hey, the character's working, people are liking this, and it is. And I think in terms, now having done where it's going, like in terms of where it's going and now being part of this whole thing, I think it's actually in some ways the perfect start. I think it's going to feel really nice. The longer it goes on, the more perfect that first book feels. But as a rule, well, no, there are no rules, but as a really to think about, like it's a good thing to think about why this place, why this person, why does the story begin on this day, and that I think applies to all of those things, all of those mediums, and because if you are not the most interesting character in the story, like if it's if you're not playing as the most interesting character in the story, or if you are not following the most interesting character in the story, then what would happen if you switched over? And if you can't, if you're like, actually, this is the right perspective, not because often the right perspective is the new person in the world, the one walking in, but so often you're like, oh, so we give the eyes of the audience to that person to witness this other stuff happening. Then it's really worth thinking about, like, okay, have I actually given my character enough of that? Enough? Have I made them interesting enough, or am I just using them as this, as the means of walking through this world that I really like, and they get to meet these other characters, but what are they actually doing? So I think I think asking that question in all mediums is pretty key. And I'd say in games it can maybe be a bit different because because in more than the other ones, you are the character. So you can get away with a bit. It is a thing that, some gamers want to go like, no, I want to play the most interesting character. I want to be the one that like goes through the journey. But there are some genres where you are allowed to be a kind of empty vessel and all the cool stuff happens around you. And you don't need to fill the character in because the character is the player and they're bringing all of themselves to this thing. And you let the everyone else be amazing. So I think in video games is probably the one area where you can potentially leave that space open for the player to fill. Everything else requires a bit more thought.
Yeah, it's like the empty avatar of something like the Elder Scrolls games or something like that, where it's
Yes.
like you don't even see your character's face or body, and
Yeah.
and it's just kind of like, yeah, you start to develop like I think like Final Fantasy games are really great in the sense that it's like you're developing a party, and so you're able to kind of
Yeah.
bring in different character personalities through different party members is another really cool way of going about it. But
That's right.
I like what you said about like the
The sense of
character,
place, yeah.
yeah, the sense of place being so important to the
Mm.
character, and that comes right down to world building and how you kind of portray your setting and the spaces that that character inhabits and visits. So how do you think you can effectively convey details about the world regardless of the medium through which it's being presented?
Yeah, I think that was a big thing with the fetch books, first of all, because you to make sure all those things align, theme, character, plot, all that stuff. Especially if you're doing first person, which I am with the fetch books, there's some part of me that's always thinking, like, why would he think this? Why would he either tell the reader, however this works, or like, why would he be noticing these things? Why would he be thinking these things? It has to resonate with him in some way. So my soul for that, the beauty of where the character and world overline for me with the fetch books is that if we're in this kind of post-apocalyptic fantasy world where everyone's struggling with the events of the Coda when the magic died, and Fetch feels responsible for that happening. So everything he describes, every time he does want to spend a page describing the dilapidated nature of this thing, or what's happened to angels or dragons or wizards, it's not just empty. He's not just like, it's not just wallpaper. He is going through it because his guilt is laced in every part of that, and so there is a personal reaction to it. And so I think that does build on that thing of going, why this character in this world? Because why are they interested in these things? Why are they noticing this stuff? Why is the world going to react to them and they're going to react to it? And one way, that's once again why the easy solve is always someone who hasn't been in this world before. Reacting to things because it's new and exciting or it's scary is one way to do it. But it has been done a lot. And I think in video games, we've seen so much of that, like the character with amnesia waking up and going, "Oh my god, what's this thing?" So someone could explain it. It's a way to do it, but we've seen so much of it as a trope for so long that it is an easy shorthand, but it is not it's always more interesting if this world means something to everyone talking about it.
Yeah.
I think that's what's, Citizen Sleeper 2, it begins with a kind of amnesia thing, but so,
amnesia makes for a good tutorial. Let's just say that.
It does.
In the case of video games.
But what I thought is really interesting is that the person, though, who's explaining to you, so the idea is, at the beginning of that, there's been a kind of glitch. So you were doing a little, you are a sleeper, so you're kind of a consciousness in a robotic body, to super simplify it. And you're going through a little reboot sequence and it fucks up. And so then when you come out of it, you're like, hey, where am I? What is this? Your good friend is next to you who's just witnessed their friend's consciousness fucking glitch out and disappear and suddenly can't be remembered. And it's great because, you're doing the, so it's like, we're going through the same amnesia story where he has to explain things to you, but he's fucked up about it. Like, this is like essentially to him, his friends just died and now he's got to explain what's going on to this version of his friend that like looks like them as they've faded from existence, potentially forever. So that is an incredible way, I think, to use the same mechanic and the way that the amnesia story serves, but give it immediate stakes, character, heart. Immediately it's just like it's a way to start a game. You're like, oh, dude, that's awful.
It's like your friend,
tell me how this works.
This dude is traumatized. He's like absolutely crushed.
Yeah, like, I'm so sorry. I do not know you.
I don't know you. Please explain to me the basics of how a cycle works in this game. It's like, oh, okay, dude, but I'm reeling. So I think there are ways around it, and like that feels like that solve of going like, okay, this mechanic works, but how do we care really quickly?
Yeah, and in the case of comics and video games too, but also screen, it's like they have the added benefit of being able to convey world building information through the visual aspects of. And in the case of comics, it's like incredible art sells a world. In the case of TV and film and video games, it's like the information and the way that the cinematography is working, the way it's framed,
even music.
The music, the costume design, like set design, all this different kind of stuff can add so much to it.
Yes, I think there's one of the things to really look out for is in film or in a comic, if you're ever describing what's happening in text and also showing it visually, you should maybe think about whether you're using the most of the medium. And you do see it sometimes where it's like, I guess maybe because I pick up a lot of kind of noirish comics and stuff as well, that it's like, the thing where you're seeing the dialogue having going, I went here to check this thing out. It was like this. And it's like, oh, yeah, I can see. It's like, tell me about something else. You've got this room. If we can see that visually playing out, tell me about something else in your narration, in your dialogue. And the same way in a screenplay, it's like, if you're going to use voiceover, don't be just telling me things that we can see. Like, find out how you can use your time. Yeah, because you don't have that many pages in a comic. You don't have that much time in an episode of television or on screen. So don't waste it, and don't tell me things I already know.
You can be like Star Wars, just be like, bam, here's all the information at the beginning of this text scroll.
Read this essay.
about Trade Federation, whatever.
Yeah. I know, which I guess that's like this, and you know what? That wouldn't work without the music.
Yeah.
Without the perfect music.
And then the follow up of like text, and it'd be like, we're in space and now we pan out and there's a ship, there's a planet, something like that.
Yeah.
My favorite thing though is seeing online when people go in and like rescore like iconic movie scenes and suddenly it's not a horror, it's a comedy and you didn't know and it was amazing.
I haven't seen this. This sounds great.
Yeah, I'll have to send you some when I see
Okay, please.
I think there's even someone's done a bunch of famous scenes to, what is it, the Dire Straits Walk of Life? The and it's like, it's so great because it's
Wait, no, I think jarring. I saw one like that where it was Silence of the Lambs, but they recut it to make it look like a romantic comedy.
Oh my god.
There's a bunch of great ones like
Hello,
that.
Clarice. And it's like, damn. Smooth talker, you.
That's it. Yeah. No, music, yeah, it could do everything. So no, that's right. It is going, if you're gonna do that, well, you'd better fucking do it with style. If you're gonna hit us with a big block of text, make it, you'd better hope that one of the best composers of all time is gonna come in and give you a fucking ripping tune.
That is a class A like screen version of a big ass fantasy prologue. Like
That's
make
right.
it work.
Yeah, and that's it. And you don't, and that's sometimes if you're gonna do that thing, if you well, that's once again why character and voice is important. That if you're gonna do that, well, you got to know what you're doing is interesting enough to, as George Saunders said, like to go from one line to the next. If you do that, have your prologue, have your exposition. I think sometimes people get too, ready to go like, oh, I've heard exposition dumping's a bad thing. So if I ever see it, it's like, oh, that's what that is. But if you're enjoying reading it, if it's bringing you from the one bit to the next, then fucking enjoy it. It's great, but it's the way you do things more than what you're doing, I think.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, this has all been such incredible advice. But to close out, do you have any final little bits of wisdom that you can share for any authors out there looking to explore?
Greta's going,
mediums?
no, I'm giving me one last.
Yeah.
Your hand gestures today are on point.
Yeah.
You can tell I had coffee too late at night.
Yeah. I just have my second one here while I'm with this, so I am ramped up too. And after so much, it's look. I think the thing is, it's like find yourself being. Probably the thing is, and it sums up things I've kind of said across there. It's just like keep yourself inspired and reacting to stuff. And there's good movies, bad movies, and even if it's just a little tidbit of things. But I'd say whatever you're doing, you don't just have to read in that genre, in that medium. That's often not where you get the most useful inspiration and ideas. I think reading poetry is always great. I'd say, and if you are, say it out loud. I think actually understanding, all these things, there's language in all of these different mediums. And I think just appreciating and understanding language gets kind of undervalued and forgotten about in the mix of it. We think a lot about just story overall. But going back to that idea of moment by moment, word by word, sentence by sentence, will this one drive to the next? Finding that feeling of when you find good text and it feels good in your mouth and it feels fun to say, find that love and find that enjoyment. I think I had it here somewhere. I'd say for me, the A.A. Milne, Winnie the Pooh poems, this is the world of Christopher Robin. So this is when we were very young and now we are 6. They're children's poems, cute little things. But I'd say this probably influenced my writing more than anything. Something in that, hearing my mum read that to me at a young age, and then being one of the first things I read, the rhythm of it, the fun of language that came in that, I think is what got into me really quickly. And so I'd say find those things for you, either going back to things that you read when you were younger, find those things that first made you love storytelling, and sinking into that, because then it's all fun. If you're coming at this from that element of fuck, I love language, I love story, this is enjoyable, then it's all great. Where if it's, it can get so easy to get caught up and go, well, I need to write this kind of book because then I can get published, and I shouldn't do that kind of thing. And then if I do this, that could get adapted. So I've got to learn how to do that. Just stay as far away from that at any point as possible. If you're not enjoying it, enjoying the things you're taking in, and even if it's bad, my fiance and I had a not particularly, we went and saw a play that was very disappointing recently. And it fostered so much great conversation, sitting in the pub after a play that doesn't hit the way you want it to, but you can kind of go oh, it should have done this though, and that thing didn't work because of this. Really, nothing is better. So if you're, I think just making sure you keep coming back to that stuff is great.
Yeah, there's beauty in the language, and when you can deconstruct, then you can construct.
Yeah,
ways that you find most satisfying. And I love reading Dr. Seuss to my kids and having a good fucking time with it. And now my son's starts to rhyme stuff together just because for the fun of it. And just this the past 2 days he started telling knock jokes and he doesn't understand how they work, but I love it. It's like,
I love
knock,
it.
knock, who's there? Giraffe. Giraffe who? Giraffe who? And that's all he does. And I'm like, it's beautiful. Like we all
Yeah.
develop this association with language, and if we can foster a really fruitful connection with language and creativity, I think nothing can stop you regardless of the medium that you decide to tackle.
Hell yeah. Well said.
Beautiful.
All right. Well, that's it for this writing masterclass and our two-parter with Luke. It has been absolutely wonderful, my friend. Thank you so much for doing this with us.
Thank you.
Thank you again. So great to chat with you both. And yeah, hopefully we'll do it again soon.
Hell yeah, man. As well, if you want to keep the show going, helping us do what we do here, you can contribute to our Patreon at $5 or more each month. And you can get an exclusive reading by Luke from his new novel, Whisper in the Wind, which is out now. And you can also check out all his other books. Start with the Last Smile in Sunder City, book 1, and enjoy the Fetch Phillips archives. Then you got Luke's comic, you got his book is coming, or sorry, his video game is coming out soon, and you can enjoy his acting. See that beautiful face on Black Sails. What's the one you got going on right now? There's a new season, I think. Out
Scrublands. Yeah, so
Scrublands.
Scrublands.
Yep.
That's out around the world. Yeah, the second season's dropping just before the next book, actually. So that'll be out now in Australia anyway, and search for it. It's coming out around the world too.
It's out there. Lots of amazing stuff. Luke, thank you again, buddy. And where can people find you online?
Yeah, I am Long Luke Arnold on Insta and Blue Sky, and lukearnold.net is my website where you can sign up for my mailing list.
Fantastic. And you can follow SFF Addicts across the board at SFF Addicts Pod. You can follow me at Adrian M. Gibson. And if you want a little bit of mushrooms to sprout in your life, you can go check out Mushroom Blues, my debut novel. Greta, what about you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at Greta K. Kelly. Go check out my books, including Queen of Days. If you want a taste of a group of fuck-ups trying to rob a god and the demon they hire to grudgingly keep them alive. It's out now.
Go check it out.
I did forget, I am on TikTok as well, and I do read the first page of different books on there. So, yeah, this will be coming up soon, and Greta, I have to get your book added to the list as well. I'm now saying this because it's been months since I've done it, so I'm saying this to hold myself accountable that I'll actually sit down and do this.
He's going to start it again.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. All right, well, thank you everyone for listening. For now, keep reading, keep imagining, and we'll see you next time on SFF Addicts.